Breaking the Law by Judas Priest. Rebellion is one of the pillars that rock and roll is built upon. And what's more rebellious than a song called Breaking the Law? This is a classic early heavy metal song. This has this really cool single note melodic riff going on, and it's basically all power chords. So it's perfect if you're just starting out, and this is a fun one even if you've been playing for a while. Breaking the Law by Judas Priest. That's what we're doing today on Ray Plays Guitar. We're going to do it as simply and as accurately as possible. Let's get into it. So this song starts off with this riff. First three notes, A, B, C. And we could play those notes right here. A, open A string. It's the fifth string. There's A. B is a whole step up from A, or 2 frets, which takes us to the 2nd fret. There's the note B. C is a half step up from B. There's C. So we have A, B on the 2nd fret, C on the 3rd. A, B, C. So we're going to play those notes, A, B, C, then we're going to play A, B, C again, and then A, B, C again. But it's in a slightly different rhythm each time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. After that, we're going to play the notes F, G, and A. And we could play that here. F, G, is here, and we already said A is this open 5th string. So we can play F, G, A, and we're going to play that again. F, G, A. So far we have then we're going to finish that off with playing this note G, 3rd fret of the 6th string, going to this note C, and then B, which leads you back to open A, and we're going to do that all over again. A lot of videos I've seen Glenn Tipton and KK Downing play it like this. When they go to the F section, they'll play A here on the 5th fret of the 6th string instead of playing it 5th string open. And then they'll do that little thing at the end, going from G and then to C, where we're doing this sort of thing. We're just kind of roll our finger or lay it flat. By doing that, it also releases the 6th string. Or you could play it all on one string. If this note is A, remember B is a whole step up from A, so that's right there in the 7th fret, and then C is just a half step up from B, right there on the 8th fret. Or if you prefer, you could put your pinky on this A and then play B and C over here. Now this whole song just uses notes from an Aeolian scale. What is that? That's just the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. We already know where A, B, and C are. A, B, and C on the 5th string. Here's C. Go up a whole step, that gets you to D. Go up another whole step, that gets you to E. But between E and F, there's a half step. So now we're at F, but between everything else there's a whole step. F to G, whole step. And then G, back to A, another whole step. So there's only two places where we have half steps, between the notes B and C and between the notes E and F. Between everything else there's a whole step. So once again, if we start on the open fifth string, we have A, B, half step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, half step to F, whole step to G, and then a whole step to A. And then we can continue. Whole step to B, half to C, and then whole to D, whole to E, half to F, etc., etc. You can do this on every string. Suppose we start with this open E string. Here's E. Well, F is just a half step away. That's why F winds up being on the first fret here. And then whole step to G, whole step to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Simple. So with that in mind, let's now take a look at the chords in the verse. The verse starts off with an A5 power chord. A power chord is just a two-string chord. That's the minimum. And it has a letter and a number. The letter tells us what the root of the chord is, or what the main note of the chord is. A5, our root is the note A, and we're going to use this open fifth string as our root again. The 5 just means we're also playing the fifth note of an A major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? That's just what it is. So now you know. That's what an A5 is. But whenever you see a 5 chord, an A5, D5, C sharp 5, whatever, the 5 just means that it's a power chord. So the chords that we're going to use in the first verse are A5, right there, and then we're going to go to C5. So, a C5, we're just going to take our first finger, put it on that note C, which we already found out is on the 3rd fret, A, B, C. We have a root, and then this interval of a 5th, right there. We can see that this is the same sort of shape as this, but here we're just using, we have an open root, open string root. But then when we turn it into a movable shape, this is what it looks like. There's a C5 there. The other chord we're going to use is a G5. We're just going to take these two fingers and move them up to these two strings. This note is G, but we already knew that, right? So there's G, and we do this power chord shape. We have a root and a 5th. There's our power, there's our G5. Now we're going to play this like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. They throw in these muted strums right before we hit the C chord and 2 before we hit the G5 chord, but then just 1 before we hit the A chord again. In time, it sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, the first verse is just that, what we just played. But the second verse goes like this. 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. The first time through it's the same, but the second time through 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, it moves up. So instead of hitting C5 and then a G5 back to A, we're going to go from C5 moving up to D5 and then moving up another whole step to E5. All right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now that leads us right into the pre-chorus, which starts on an F5 chord. So here's an E5 chord. There's a half step between E and F, so we just go up 1 fret. And now we're at F5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then to a C5 chord. Same frets, now we just have the C root on the 6th string. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and back to F5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and now to E5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a full measure and then we hit it on beat 1 of the next measure, 1, and then rest 2, 3, 4. Now we're into the chorus of the song, which is just this open A string, palm muted, and we're going to do a little genting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Then we're going to hit these stabs. So we're going from this open A string, open 5th string, and then we're going to go up to this A on the 14th fret of the 3rd string. We're going to play that note. We're also going to include the 14th fret of the 4th string. That note is E. These two notes together make an A power chord. Just imagine this. Here we have an A and an E power chord. Well, now I'm just going to take that A and move it up an octave. Same two notes, just kind of an inverted power chord here. Anyway, so I'm covering those two notes, but then I'm also covering the same two notes an octave higher, up on the 17th fret, 17 of 1 and 17 of 2. Here we have another A, and then another E. Now I'm playing all of that. Breaking the law, breaking the law. So we hit that on the and of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we strike that, we slide it down, and then we come back to the open A chugs on beat 2 of the next measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So then the next time we do 2 stabs. The first one on the and of 3, the next one on the and of 4. And here's the whole chorus again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Then we go into another verse, into that second verse. Now on the album, they do 2 stabs there. You know, they can do overdubs in the studio. So then on another take, they just go back and do the chords for the verse. But live, you're going to have to do that stab and then get back to that chord for the rhythm. So you're probably going to wind up doing it just one stab and then back to that chord. So the second verse, we do the climb up, the pre-chorus, and then they do the volume swell going into the second chorus. Breaking the low, breaking the low. So after the second chorus, they go into a bridge, and that starts on this chord B5. So we're going to go to this note B, which we know where that is. A, B, C. A, B, C. So here's B. Starts on a B5, and then it goes to an A5, and back to B, and that's it. But it's played in this rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So 3 hits all on the upbeats, or all on the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we go to a D5. A, B, C, D. There's our D5. And this section uses these chords, D5 and an F5, D, E, F, and a C5. Here's D, C is right below it. There's C5. So we have D5, F to C, back to D. Then F up to G, back to D. And then F to C again. And then F up to G again. And then after that, we're back to A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, F, G, A, F, G, A, G, C, B. We're back to that part. And they just repeat that a few times. The last couple times, though, on that, they anticipate every chord change. So what I mean by that is instead of changing to F on beat 1, they change to it a little early on the end of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I can't count and play this at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So every time that when they go to the F, it's anticipated. The G is always anticipated, but then when they go back to the A, that's also anticipated. So that's the only other little thing to be careful of. But that's it. Now, when you're playing the chorus, it's crucial that we get a proper chug, and that requires a proper palm mute. So I'm taking this part of my hand and I'm just resting it on the end part of the string. If I move it up too much, the note gets choked too much, obviously. If I move it too far back, we don't get enough palm mute. So I find that spot that sounds really good to me, about right there. But good palm mutage is crucial for rock and roll. So recap. That's the intro and the outro. The verse has these chords: A5, C5, and G5. That's it. The second verse has those chords, but then it goes A5, C5, D5, E5. Pre-chorus, F5 to C5. And then back to F5, but then to E5. With a rest, and that leads you to the chorus. Open A. And then those jabs. Second time it happens on the... Second time you do 2 jabs. And then the bridge. B5 and A5. Then it goes to this D section. D, F, C, back to D5. F, G5 to D5. F5, C5, D5. F5, G5. And then you're back to... That's the whole song. Well, that's Breaking the Law by Judas Priest in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please leave those below. If you found this video helpful, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to Ray Plays Guitar, hit that notification bell, but most of all, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.